He had his gun, so he just swung it open.
I start to notice that, the atmosphere feels a little bit weird.
First thing he seen was this 6.5 foot tall, broad shoulder, dark hair. That freaked him out.
We hadn't talked to her about like life and death and what any of that means. She's 3 years old,
So we turned around. Suddenly there's a whole tree falling across the road.
And she was describing to us that, there was a deceased person that she could see visually.
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, where we tackle the ever-expanding history and mystery of monsters and supernatural madness every Monday. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca for more information, or even check out exclusive content and support us at patreon.com/CryptidClues.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Cryptid Clues. I am your host, Taylor, and today we are going to be continuing our discussion on UAP, UFOs. However, some quick plugs. You can find us on our social media channels, YouTube, Facebook, and X. Additionally, you can reach us directly via cryptidclues@gmail.com. Now, I also must apologize. A couple weeks back, I was sick with something horrible, and my goodness, it has hit me again. It's just the season of giving, and I keep being given a cold. It's just not fun. But that's not stopping me. I am here, as I said, to discuss the latest updates on the UAP, UFO stuff regarding the Congressional UAP hearing that took place just the other few weeks past. Now, this is basically a continuation from the other one that took place almost a year ago, I believe it was. Now, we did 2 episodes that covered all those details on the previous congressional hearing, because there was just so much information to break down. Now, I understand that there's a lot of things with New Jersey and everywhere in North America right now, whether it's UFOs or drones or who knows what. We're going to be breaking that down. Not in today's episode. Reuben has his own plethora of information that he's going to be bringing to the show. So this is basically a 1 of 3 part, I'm going to say. So this is going to cover the congressional hearing. Our second part is going to be touching point on a few of these notes from the congressional hearing, but deep diving into all this new stuff that Reuben has found out regarding the UFOs, UAPs. And then I'm thinking part 3 is going to be exploring all of this crazy stuff that is just popping off with these sightings and whether or not, like I said, it's drones or it's UAPs, UFOs, who knows what. We're not going to be providing answers because we don't know ourselves, but we're just going to be condensing and highlighting these things so that you guys that are listening can form your own thoughts and add a little bit more of evidence or information to your own archives of information that you're trying to figure out what's going on. So hopefully you guys are able to learn a couple things as you listen to these episodes, because there's a lot of very interesting developing things on the horizon right now on this subject. So without further ado, as I said, we covered the previous congressional hearing, and so months later, here we are. Now, that first congressional hearing took place with 3 individuals. Ryan Graves, who is the executive director of Americans for Safe Aerospace, a retired Air Force Major, David Grush, and retired Navy Commander, David Fravor. It's important to note these men were sworn in under oath and revealed some very interesting things, including the term recovered non-human biologics. Now, in this episode, as I said, focusing on this latest congressional hearing, this took place November 2024. As the meeting commenced, I want to point out here that it was mentioned how many folks in positions of power did not want this meeting to happen and tried to suppress yet another UAP congressional setting from taking place. I'm not saying that from my own experience. I'm actually saying that because they mentioned this at the start of this meeting, that lots of individuals did not want this meeting to carry forward, which is very interesting for them to say. Now, these meetings are meant to serve as a means to provide useful knowledge on UAPs and UFOs to taxpayers, because the truth is, we just don't really know anything, and there is definitely something going on, including a very large degree of secrecy. Now, as this meeting continues to open up, they mention a program that is denied by the government to exist, but its focus is to supposedly work directly into investigating UAP phenomenon. There's a 12-page document that was handed in from the Pentagon to be submitted into this congressional hearing as evidence, as well in reference to this non-existent government program. Now, this congressional meeting is very unique because it's full of Republican and Democratic representatives that are working together to find the truth on this. And I think that's fantastic to have whatever your political background is. It doesn't matter in this case. Like, there is something very, very serious going on. It could be a threat to national security. It could be something out of this world. It could be just anything. We don't have answers for it. And so putting aside your backgrounds and your history, it's just like, okay, we got to work together to figure out the truth here for our country, for the people. And I think that's great. So as we're moving on from that, we can see, and this is something that to me is very sad, how empty this Congress room is on such an important topic. Now, you have some familiar faces that are asking these questions that have returned to petition for more information on UAP, UFO disclosure, which is wonderful. But the whole room in general was much more empty than the first congressional hearing was. Again, like I said, it's a shame, but I digress. After a few opening statements, the witnesses began their opening remarks, starting with Tim Gallaudet, who called out UAPs as a safety risk for Navy pilots. Now, he was the chief meteorologist for the Navy back in 2015 during a go-fast encounter between a Navy pilot and a UAP, which, if you're watching the YouTube version, I'm going to insert that video clip for you to see right here. Audio listeners, you're going to hear it as well. You might remember this as the good old Tic Tac video, so I'm going to play 2 clips for you.
A whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating. Nickel 6-1 Tango Logic, over. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting. What the fuck is that? Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at that, man. Look at it fly!
So basically those clips are of an object moving and the military is just trying to lock onto it, and they successfully do in that second clip. It's quite something. And again, like I said, if you're watching the YouTube version, you can actually see the videos inserted there. So that being said, now that clip was released in 2020 along with many other UAP related items. Dr. Gallaudet further accused branches of government to be engaging in disinformation campaigns. Now, this was to discredit UAP whistleblowers, and it's worth noting that his testimony didn't use the terms alien or extraterrestrial, but he did mention, and I quote, "a new realization that we're not the only advanced intelligence in the universe." So there's a lot of key words. You got to focus on the words here, because a lot of these individuals that are being interviewed, they're apprehensive on saying certain things, and so you have to really listen, and you can tell that they're trying to work a way around what maybe confidentiality forms they've signed and what they can talk about, because there's a lot of privacy involved with such an important topic. Now, our second witness, Mr. Luis Elizondo, formerly Department of Defense, put it forward that the United States and some of its adversaries are in possession of UAP technologies, and that excessive secrecy has been used to hide the fact that we aren't alone in the universe. He also asked for more protections for whistleblowers. Our third witness, Michael Gold, a former NASA administrator whose focus was on space policy. Now, he played a part on an independent study team back in 2023 that made a report stating NASA should play a more prominent role in studying and collecting data on UAPs. Now, Gold specified that he was speaking for himself. He was not acting as a representative of NASA, just for more participation on NASA's behalf in the study of UAPs. And I quote, "Data is the lifeblood of NASA and science in general. Without data, nothing can be achieved. And this is why the stigmatization of the UAP phenomena is so harmful. the stigma prevents scientific inquiry, which is the best tool that we have to understand anomalies from being fully applied. End quote. I love that comment so much about stigma and its harmful effects on finding more conclusive scientific truth on these things. That alone applies to so many other things, especially Sasquatch. Now, the fourth and final witness is Mr. Michael Schellenberger, who firmly reiterated that more UAP transparency is required. He revisited statements made by David Grush that he hadn't provided evidence to back up the extraordinary accusations made. Now, he's referring to David Grush specifically not being able to provide evidence to these statements. And that there may be other explanations to what David Grush was putting forward besides extraterrestrial origins for UAPs. And he was including hoaxes as a possibility, birds, drones, CGI, or just natural occurrences like ball lightning. So highlights from that were questions directed to Mr. Elizondo. Has the government conducted secret crash retrieval programs? Yes or no? Yes is the response. Were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft? Yes or no? Yes was the response. Absolutely crazy. And I feel like those are very well-spoken questions, especially because you got to kind of navigate, like I said. They can't just openly answer, like, hey, do aliens exist? I can't answer that unless we're in like an enclosed confidential setting. You know, they say the privacy thing, and they throw their wall and their shields up. But if you word it, you know, in that right kind of manner, then you can get an answer. And I feel like this was worded in the right kind of way, and you're getting that answer. So I'm going to play a clip here. Now, this is a USS Omaha UAP recording from July 2019. And I to my knowledge, I was not aware of this until recently. And so I'm going to play this for the audio listeners. And then if you, as I said, are on the YouTube version, you'll see the footage here as well.
Splashing and bearing around. Sure. You got 2 minutes, 30 knots. Keep going, bro. Let's go down. You're making 10s. We could probably bring that 35 relative. Sir. Yeah. We got a lot of white water up there, some 6-foot swells. Whoa, it's getting close.
Yeah, we have 31 knots sustained wind, topside, gust of 40.
Whoa, splashed. Mark bearing and range.
So I wanted to play that because that was actually a topic of discussion during the congressional hearing. And it's just fascinating, this thing hovering above the water. And then, yeah, as you heard, splash, splash, and it just descends. There's something weird going on with these flying objects and our oceans. There's something really weird going on. And that's going to segue us into this next topic of discussion here that Gallaudet had actually brought up. Now, he detailed that in the 80s on a nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine, that an unknown object exhibited the characteristics of a Russian torpedo in terms of its speed of movement. Now, its closing rate with the submarine was very, very fast, and then it suddenly slowed down, and then it followed the submarine very slowly in its wake for a period of minutes, and then rapidly exited the scene. And I quote, "Nothing that we know of technology-wise could replicate that," end quote. That was a submerged UAP encounter. It just seems like there's a lot more going on, like I said, with our oceans that we really are aware of. And what's the percentage of our oceans that we've explored? I mean, everyone knows it's not a lot. So moving on. Interesting note here. The human body can go 9 Gs for a few seconds before experiencing negative biological consequences. And Gs are basically like a measurement of speed, is how I would put it. So an F-16 fighter can sustain 17 to 18 G forces before experiencing deteriorating factors to its frame and external components. The craft in question are reportedly doing in excess of 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000 Gs. The catch to this as well is that the witness, Mr. Elizondo, mentioned how these craft are responsive to Air Force craft, and in some cases exhibit stalker-like tendencies by following certain military craft. And that's where it's plausible that these are maybe living biological craft. And I think the interpretation of that might be more, I don't want to say atmospheric beast, but if you've seen the movie Nope, there is a very interesting atmospheric beast, UFO creature in that movie that's a living biological craft, I guess you could say. And that would basically kind of be categorized in this same example here. But as I move along, on the congressional hearing panel, Mrs. Luna posed a question that whatever these entities or craft are, if any one of the witnesses has heard details regarding individuals that are religious, then seeing these entities or crafts suddenly disappear. So Mrs. Luna's approach to this was regarding that some of these things being good and some of them being bad as reported by individuals who are religious. And I thought that was interesting. I'm going to be posing that question to Reuben because we've discussed in the past how there is differences between, again, aliens and heaven and hell and God and cryptids. But then at its core, there are certain times where these things cross over with each other, with Bigfoot and religion, aliens and religion. And it's just very peculiar. It's something that I don't know if I'm ever going to have an answer for that in my lifetime. I'm not expecting it. It's very weird. But in this case, with aliens and religion, there are a lot of crossovers, so many. And when you examine in this case with what Mrs. Luna is saying, you have individuals who start praying, who start really leaning back onto their faith. And all of a sudden, the sighting might stop or something changes and they're okay. And so that's something that I'm going to be poking Reuben a little bit about just to get his interpretation of that, because there is definitely something powerful there if you are more of the faith, I should say. Now, each of the witnesses agreed that the federal government is 100% withholding evidence and truth regarding UAPs and UFOs. What do you believe UAPs could be or are? Now, Gallaudet, strong evidence that they're non-human higher intelligence. Elizondo, I echo my colleague's comments, sir. Schellenberger, genuinely do not know. And Gold, don't know, but we must find out. Mr. Elizondo states that UAPs aren't afraid of being caught more out in the open, and he also mentions that they are so bold as to even break military aircraft formations. They have continued frequent appearances near military installations. It's very interesting because we've discussed that before, where it could be very classified weapon-based military installations, and these things are just all around. And we've talked in the past where people are stationed on these bases and it's like, oh, it's the norm. Yeah, these things, they just pop up every once in a while and they kind of chill on the perimeter and then they disappear. Oh, but they're always hanging around. And the fact, too, that they are breaking military aircraft formations, oh my goodness. It goes hand in hand with the comment from before about how these things exhibit stalkerish tendencies, where they're out flying, who knows, patrol. Maybe they're going out there to actually inspect what's going on with these UAPs. But you have military pilots out there, and then these things start following you, following these aircraft, and then all of a sudden, like, hey, okay, here's a squad of, let's say, 8 F-16s, and this thing just like zooms by doing 3,000 Gs and breaks this formation up. It's like, what the bloody hell? That is absolutely insane. And what is the message embedded in such an act too? Are you trying to, I guess it's up to interpretation. It really is. And I could ramble on about that forever, and I could just be pitching left, right, and center different theories, but we just don't know. My own interpretation, and I'm going to be completely unbiased here as much as possible, I think it's just a message to like, hey, just chill. You don't have to be so militaristic. You don't have to be so weapons hot. And that's why they're so focused on observing our military installations, observing and following military aircraft, because they know you can look at these things and you can see that they can be very dangerous and very problematic. And again, it's up to interpretation, but we know that there is very much an interest in things that can cause harm and can cause damage on a planetary scale here. And it seems to be, for the most part, one of the major hotspots to where you're going to see UFOs, UAPs, are just going to be focused on it. Assuming, of course, that it is UFOs, UAPs, and not just drones. But judging by the evidence that has been laid out through this panel and from what our witnesses are saying, I am putting my stock more so in the fact that these are not drones, UAPs, UFOs, because I don't think that the drone technology is anywhere near what these things are capable of doing. Of course, when we're talking Gs and these things are moving a lot faster, They're unmanned, sure. And I know an F-16 as well, like we talked about, it can withstand a lot. Drones are smaller, and we're developing a crazy new technology right now for different degrees of travel and withstanding different things and different pressures, but we're not there yet. Our drone technology is not there yet. Where we're at right now with these New Jersey sightings and whatnot, as a little foreshadow, I think, okay, some of those things, yeah, our drone technology is around there, and they're doing some crazy light shows with drones and whatnot. So we need to try and figure out and see where this line is drawn between what is a drone and what is not. And of course, we're dealing with things that are just kind of floating stationary. But I think at the end of the day, when we're looking at these disclosed videos here of military personnel dealing with unexplainable flying objects, I think that they would be able to deduce if this is a drone or not with the technology that they have. Again, human technology is impressive, but it is just a small, minute thing compared to what we are dealing with. And that is why I believe that the videos I showed you today are not drones. Those are UAP, UFOs, whatever that could entail, again. But I don't think that they're a man-made drone. I think that the military has the means to discern between those two things, if that makes sense. And again, that is my position, my perspective, and I totally respect whatever decision and whatever perspective that you have. So, in closing here, Mr. Gold stated that whatever these things are, he doesn't have an answer, but he believes that that answer will surprise us all, and highlighted the possibilities of UAPs being operated by both biological and non-biological entities. Now, he was referring advanced AI with that, which is a very interesting concept to think, where we've really stepped into a new age with our AI currently, and that's human AI. Now, I can't even imagine what alien AI might be like. That could be that's just another can of worms. Oh my goodness. Now, in closing, like I said, there have been people injured by UAP encounters. They've been reverse engineering as well. They get injured from that and all the studying. And the government is actively paying them to keep them quiet or their recovery. That is just a crazy thing to think about. And it really just opens up a lot of doors. And that's something that a lot of the topic of conversation in this congressional hearing was trying to figure out, like, okay, well, where's this, like, the money is coming from taxpayers, but we don't get to know that. And a lot of these programs that exist out there, okay, well, they're getting all this money, but that's where they were trying to figure out and wanted to reveal a little bit more, because as taxpayers, this money goes into these programs, and it's just, you don't get to know. You don't get to really know where your money goes. And at the end of the day, just if this is to be believed and to be actually accurate and true, I mean, it's going into reverse engineering technologies. And it seems to be that that you have, well, they're all different witnesses, and they all counter each other a little bit at times with just their perspectives and their own beliefs. I think that there, at its core, are certain notes in each of their testimonies that bear resemblance. And I think that that's something to look for and read between the lines and find those little notes that seem to cross over and share. And it seems like a lot of these individuals are strong on that. Okay, countries, not just the United States, but across the world, have programs for tracking UFOs. They have programs for collecting crashed UFOs, and they have programs for reverse engineering and trying to get this technology going. So when you have so many people talking about this, I guess, and in different ways, I don't know, to me, it's just, I could keep going on and on, but I think that there is a bit of truth in that. And so, yeah, I'm going to leave it there. That is today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be back. I'm thinking I'm going to try and snag Reuben down for hearing everything that he's got to tell me about his UFO UAPs archive that he's accumulated. Because when I mentioned this topic to him initially, he's like, oh, Taylor, I have a lot to discuss with you. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, let's do it. And then my friend Travis, co-host on my other podcast, he was like, "Hey Taylor, have you heard about the New Jersey stuff?" And I'm like, "Well, no." And so I did a quick Google and thought, "Holy smokes, this is popping up everywhere." And the downside to this, and this, I'm not complaining, this is a whole Canadian government thing. If you're in Canada, you know. If you're in the States, maybe you don't know as well. But so there's a whole dilemma here with news and social media. And if you want news, you got to go direct to the source. You got to just watch your news on TV, or you got to go right to like the news websites and stuff, which is totally fine. But a lot of people rely on local news communities to provide news. And sometimes that's through their social media. That's through several different means. And some of the biggest social media platforms here in Canada, at least in where I'm at in British Columbia, Facebook, Instagram, those platforms. And I don't know how Google has responded. I should follow up, but basically there is this whole debacle, and I'm ranting here with the Canadian government trying to get more pay for Canadian content, and it resulted in certain things not being allowed to be published on certain platforms like Facebook and Instagram, meta stuff basically, and same with Google. And so it's inhibited a lot of people from accessing news in certain channels. So I feel like there has been a slight decline in the way news reaches Canadian people. And I feel like with something like this, with all this New Jersey stuff popping off, and now seemingly more states around the United States of America all experiencing similar activity as well, whether it's drones, UAP, UFO, everyone's trying to provide answers, and everyone's trying to come off like, oh, I know what it is, yada, yada, yada. And I don't know. I'm apprehensive. I don't think anyone has the answers, and I don't know if we can fully trust the powers to be to provide us with these answers. I think we just need to put all the evidence on the table and just examine it and kind of think for ourselves, okay, like, well, ultimately, what are we dealing with? And just try to like keep the discussion alive and discuss. And so that's what I'm hoping, that this news will keep on spreading through Canada so that Canadians can be aware of this and we can keep talking about it and discussing it, because there's lots to discuss. It is a rich topic that is just getting bigger and bigger every year. And hopefully it's not leading or building to something pretty crazy, because that would be pretty crazy. Anyways, I digress. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Cryptid Clues, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, like I said, we'll be back next week. If you want to reach us directly, you could do so via cryptidclues@gmail.com, social media channels, all that fun stuff. So until next time, take care and stay safe.